This is not advice most men are ready to hear. Because the moment you understand it, you stop playing a role you didn't know you were cast into. You realize that many of your conversations were never conversations at all. They were quiet trials, accusations without evidence, judgments without authority. And every time you explained yourself, you stepped willingly into the defendant's chair. Most men don't notice when this happens. They feel a subtle pressure, a raised eyebrow, a skeptical pause, a question framed as curiosity but weighted with implication. And instinctively, they respond. They clarify. They justify. They defend. They believe they are restoring balance. They are not. They are surrendering position. This video is dangerous because it removes a reflex that society has trained into you since childhood. The reflex to explain yourself in order to be accepted, to prove innocence when no crime has been named, to offer context when none was requested, to defend character instead of questioning authority. The truth is simple and unsettling. The one who explains accepts the premise that they owe an explanation. And the moment you accept that premise, power has already shifted away from you. Most people cannot tolerate this realization. It threatens their sense of fairness. They want to believe that clarity equals strength, that openness equals virtue, that defense equals dignity. But in real human dynamics, explanation is not neutral. It is scarce currency, and scarcity determines hierarchy. Those who speak freely devalue themselves. Those who withhold explanation force others to justify their curiosity. This is why the refusal to defend yourself feels transgressive. It violates unspoken rules. People expect access to your reasons. They expect you to smooth over discomfort. They expect you to correct their assumptions. When you don't, they experience it not as silence, but as resistance. And resistance without aggression is deeply unsettling. Understand this clearly before we go further. This is not about arrogance. It is not about rudeness. It is not about acting superior. Those are crude imitations that collapse quickly. This is about refusing a role you were never obligated to play. The role of the defendant exists only if you accept the court. In most social interactions, there is no legitimate judge. There is only perception, insecurity, and projection. People ask questions not to understand, but to locate themselves relative to you. They probe for weakness, justification, or need. When you respond defensively, you confirm that their question had authority. You elevate them without realizing it. This is why explanation weakens presence. Every sentence you add to justify yourself creates a narrative where you are reactive and the other person is evaluative. They may not intend it consciously, but the structure is set. One side seeks approval, the other grants or withholds it. Refusing to defend yourself breaks that structure entirely. Silence or minimal response introduces uncertainty. It removes the assumed hierarchy. The person pressing for explanations suddenly has to confront an uncomfortable question. Why do I feel entitled to this information? When that entitlement goes unfulfilled, the imbalance reverses. Now they are the one exposed. Most men never experience this reversal because they preempt it. They rush to clarify before anything is asked. They over-explain harmless decisions. They justify preferences, boundaries, and choices as if they require consensus to be valid. This constant self-defense trains others how to treat them. It signals that their identity is negotiable, that their position is provisional, that they can be moved with pressure. Over time, people learn that a raised question is enough to elicit compliance. The disciplined man does not allow this training to occur. He understands that not every challenge deserves response. Not every assumption deserves correction. Not every misunderstanding deserves resolution. Some things are clarified by presence alone. Others are clarified by time, and some should never be clarified at all. This is where scarcity enters. When explanations are abundant, they lose value. When they are rare, they carry weight. The man who explains everything cheapens his words. The man who explains selectively creates gravity. People listen differently when they know access is limited. This scarcity is not manufactured. It emerges naturally when you stop feeling obligated to justify your existence. Refusing to defend yourself does not mean you never speak. It means you speak from position, not pressure. You respond when there is substance, not insinuation. You engage when there is mutual respect, not when someone is testing boundaries. This distinction is subtle, and it is why most men get it wrong. They mistake silence for avoidance or minimal response for coldness. But the core is internal. You are not withholding to punish. You are withholding because there is nothing to prove. And that absence of proof-seeking changes everything. People are conditioned to expect defense. When it doesn't arrive, they reinterpret the situation. They question their assumption. They wonder if they overstepped. They reconsider the legitimacy of their position. The power dynamic quietly reorients. This is why refusing to defend yourself feels like stepping into a vacuum. There is no script, no familiar back and forth, just space. And in that space, roles dissolve. By the end of this video, you will understand why explanation is often submission, why scarcity of response creates authority, and why the strongest position is often the one that does not argue its own legitimacy. But before we go further, you must accept one thing. Once you stop defending yourself, you will make some people uncomfortable. They will accuse you of being distant, unclear, or difficult. That discomfort is not a flaw in the strategy. It is the signal that the old roles are no longer working. To understand why refusing to defend yourself flips power, you have to abandon a comforting illusion that conversations are neutral exchanges of information. They are not. Every interaction has structure, and structure determines who adapts and who is adapted to. Defense is adaptation. The moment you begin explaining yourself in response to implied judgment, you signal that the other person's perception matters more than your internal frame. You may believe you are being reasonable, but reason is irrelevant when hierarchy is being negotiated. What matters is who sets the terms. Scarcity sets terms. Anything that is abundant is treated as disposable. This is as true for attention and explanation as it is for material resources. When your reasons are freely available, people feel entitled to them. When they are not, curiosity replaces entitlement, and curiosity is a lower position than authority. This is why explanation weakens presence even when it is correct. Truth does not create power on its own. Structure does. A man can be completely justified and still lose position if he feels compelled to defend that justification. Refusal shifts the burden. When you do not explain, the other person must decide whether their curiosity is legitimate. They must evaluate whether they have standing to ask, to press, to judge. Most do not. They simply assume they did because you train them to expect compliance. Silence withdraws that training. Think of it as a scarcity of access, not a denial of reality. You are not hiding information. You are refusing to supply it on demand. This changes the psychological economy of the interaction. Words become deliberate. Questions become risky. Assumptions become expensive. This is why men who speak little are often perceived as powerful, even when they say nothing remarkable. Their words are scarce. Scarcity signals value. Value signals authority. The reactive man inverts this. He speaks constantly, not because he has more to say, but because he cannot tolerate unresolved perception. He explains to be liked. He clarifies to be understood. He defends to avoid judgment. In doing so, he reveals dependency. Dependency collapses leverage. The immovable man understands that misunderstanding is not fatal. It is temporary. Often, it is useful. When someone misunderstands you, they reveal their framework, their assumptions, their biases, their projections. If you rush to correct them, you lose that information. Refusal allows observation. This is why the refusal to defend yourself feels unnatural at first. You are conditioned to equate explanation with integrity. But integrity does not require narration. It requires consistency. Over time, consistency speaks louder than any justification. This is not theory. It is how social hierarchies stabilize. Those at the top rarely explain themselves downward. They issue statements, not defenses. They allow others to interpret, speculate, and adjust. Their silence is read as confidence because it is backed by position. But position is not always formal. It can be psychological. You create psychological position by refusing to collapse under pressure. Pressure often arrives disguised as concern, a question framed as curiosity, a suggestion framed as advice, a criticism framed as honesty. None of these require response by default. Responding automatically elevates the speaker. It accepts their framing. Refusal breaks framing. When you do not engage, the frame dissolves. The question loses momentum. The criticism hangs unsupported. The implication floats without anchor. The other person feels the imbalance, even if they cannot name it. This is where scarcity becomes visible. Your attention is limited. Your explanations are limited. Your energy is conserved. People adjust their approach accordingly. They become more careful, more precise, less casual with judgment. The dynamic shifts without confrontation. Most men never experience this because they equate passivity with weakness. But passivity is inaction without intent. Refusal is inaction with structure. It is deliberate. This is also why weak men fail when they attempt to copy it. They go silent, but internally they are still seeking approval. Their silence is reactive, not grounded. Others sense this immediately. Instead of authority, it creates tension without respect. Authority requires internal alignment. You must genuinely believe that you do not owe explanation for every choice, preference, or boundary. Not because you are superior, but because adulthood does not require constant defense. When you hold that belief calmly, silence becomes coherent. It makes sense. People may not like it. That is irrelevant. They will feel it. Scarcity of explanation forces people to engage more carefully. It filters those who seek understanding from those who seek leverage. It clarifies who respects boundaries and who resents them. This is the philosophical foundation. Power does not come from winning arguments. It comes from refusing unnecessary ones. Authority does not emerge from explanation. It emerges from restraint. And restraint, when consistent, reorganizes the social landscape quietly. Once you stop seeing defense as communication and start seeing it as a positional error, the mechanics become clear. Power does not flip because you say something clever. It flips because you refuse to accept a frame that was never legitimate. Most social pressure operates through implication, not accusation. Someone hints that your decision was questionable. Someone implies that your tone was off. Someone frames curiosity in a way that quietly demands justification. None of this is explicit. That is why it works. It relies on your internal urge to clear your name. The moment you respond defensively, the mechanism completes itself. You have accepted the role of the one being evaluated. You are no longer an equal participant. You are now responding to an unspoken charge. Even if your explanation is calm, reasonable, and correct, the structure has already shifted. You are answering. They are assessing. Refusal interrupts this at the root. When you do not explain, the implied accusation remains unsupported. It hangs in the air without confirmation. The other person is forced to decide whether to escalate openly or retreat quietly. Most retreat. Escalation requires confidence, evidence, and willingness to expose intent. Many people have none of these. This is why refusal feels powerful without being aggressive. You are not attacking the person. You are declining the premise. You are not saying they are wrong. You are acting as if their judgment is irrelevant. That subtlety is what destabilizes them. Humans are deeply sensitive to hierarchy cues. Who responds? Who waits? Who clarifies? Who lets ambiguity stand? These signals are processed faster than logic. When you refuse to defend yourself, you signal that your position does not depend on their approval. This forces recalibration. The other person begins questioning their own authority. They may soften their tone. They may add disclaimers. They may reframe their statement as misunderstanding. They may backtrack entirely. None of this is conscious strategy. It is instinctive correction in response to perceived imbalance. You did nothing. They adjusted everything. This is the reversal. The one who presses for explanation is now the one exposed. Their curiosity is visible. Their judgment is revealed. Their need for resolution becomes apparent. In contrast, your stillness reads as certainty, even if you said nothing. This is where most men panic and ruin it. They feel the shift and rush to fill it. They offer a delayed explanation. They soften the silence with reassurance. They attempt to be polite. In doing so, they collapse the structure they just created. The moment you explain after refusing, the refusal loses meaning. Consistency is the mechanism. Refusal only works when it is not used as a tactic, but as a posture. You are not withholding explanation to teach a lesson. You are withholding because you do not accept the role. The distinction is internal, but it is felt externally. People sense when silence is performative. It lacks gravity. True refusal is calm, neutral, almost indifferent. It does not demand reaction. It allows space to remain unresolved. That unresolved space is uncomfortable for those who rely on control. In negotiations, this is where leverage accumulates. The other side begins filling silence with concessions, clarifications, or softened demands. They speak to regain momentum. Each word they add narrows their position. You have not countered anything. You have simply waited. This is why the one who explains loses. Explanation reveals priorities. It reveals what you are trying to protect. It reveals what outcome you fear. Refusal conceals all of that. It keeps your internal calculus private. The other person must move without knowing where the boundaries are. Uncertainty favors the stable. The disciplined man understands that clarity can be deferred. He does not need immediate alignment. He is willing to let time do its work. Most people are not. They seek closure. They seek reassurance. They seek confirmation that they stand on solid ground. Silence denies them that comfort. This does not make you hostile. It makes you opaque. And opacity creates caution. People become more deliberate when they cannot read you. They choose words more carefully. They test less. They assume less. Over time, this rewires how others approach you. They stop making casual judgments. They stop expecting access to your reasoning. They stop assuming they can pressure you into explanation. Not because you told them to stop, but because the structure no longer rewards it. This is the real mechanism at work. You are not asserting dominance. You are removing incentives. When defending yourself no longer yields compliance, people stop demanding defense. When explanation is no longer guaranteed, it becomes costly to ask for it. And cost reshapes behavior faster than confrontation ever could. By now, you should see that refusing to defend yourself is not an act of defiance. It is an act of conservation. You conserve energy. You conserve meaning. You conserve position. You allow others to spend themselves instead. The final piece is the consequence, because once you stop defending yourself, you will be perceived differently. Some will respect it. Some will resent it. Some will misinterpret it entirely. The question is whether you are prepared for what that change brings. Refusing to defend yourself does not simply change conversations. It changes your social climate. The moment you stop explaining, justifying, or correcting every assumption, you step out of a familiar economy. One where effort is rewarded with acceptance. One where clarity is exchanged for comfort. That economy collapses quickly when you withdraw. What replaces it is quieter, sharper, less forgiving. Silence exposes intent, but it also attracts projection. When you stop defending yourself, people will supply explanations on your behalf. Some will assume confidence. Others will assume arrogance. Some will assume depth. Others will assume avoidance. None of these interpretations are fully correct, and you will not rush to fix them. This is the first cost. You lose control over immediate perception. You gain control over structure. Many men cannot tolerate this trade. They want to be understood now. They want misinterpretations corrected quickly. They want reassurance that they are seen accurately. When that need remains active, refusal becomes painful. The urge to clarify resurfaces, and with it, the old dynamics return. This is why most men fail at this posture. They attempt refusal externally while still seeking validation internally. Their silence is strained. Their body language betrays tension. Their eventual explanations arrive apologetic, as if to compensate for the discomfort they caused. Others sense this weakness immediately. The posture collapses. True refusal requires internal resolution. You must accept that some people will be uncomfortable with your restraint. You must accept that not everyone will like you more for speaking less. You must accept that certain doors close when you stop negotiating your legitimacy. Those closures are not losses. They're filtration. People who relied on your explanations to feel superior will disengage. People who needed constant access to your reasoning will lose interest. People who tested boundaries casually will stop trying. What remains are interactions grounded in respect rather than pressure. This makes your world smaller, but stronger. There is also a deeper consequence that few anticipate. When you stop defending yourself, your words begin to matter more. You no longer have the luxury of casual speech. When you do choose to explain, it must be intentional. When you do choose to clarify, it must be necessary. Your silence raises the cost of your voice. This forces discipline. You cannot hide behind volume. You cannot soften weak positions with excessive context. You must know where you stand before you speak, because once you do, it will be taken seriously. Many men are not ready for that weight. They prefer the safety of constant explanation, where mistakes are diluted by more words. Refusal removes that buffer. It demands precision. It demands alignment between action and identity. If you are inconsistent, silence will expose it faster than speech ever could. This is why the posture is not for everyone. It is not a trick. It is not a performance. It is a long-term stance that reshapes how others relate to you. Some will rise to meet it. Others will interpret it as distance and drift away. You do not chase them. You do not explain. You let the structure speak. There is a reason this principle appears repeatedly in historical power dynamics. Those who hold position rarely defend it publicly. They allow outcomes to validate them. They understand that argument invites equality. Defense invites judgment. Refusal preserves asymmetry. But asymmetry demands responsibility. When you no longer explain yourself, you cannot rely on misunderstanding to excuse poor behavior. Your actions stand alone. Your silence amplifies them. This is the final cost. You must be internally consistent because there is nowhere to hide. The disciplined man accepts this willingly. He understands that authority is not claimed through defense, it is assumed through restraint. He does not rush to correct every misinterpretation. He does not accept every invitation to justify himself. He knows that some silence is more clarifying than any explanation. And he knows that not defending himself will make some people uneasy. That unease is not hostility, it is adjustment. The world recalibrates when you stop stepping into the courtroom. Conversations change, expectations shift. Power moves quietly, without announcement. You do not argue your worth. You do not plead your case. You do not defend what does not require permission. You simply remain. And over time, others learn where you stand, without you ever having to say it.